back. Let's discuss the water challenges being faced in the Gauteng province. For that, my team's Benoit Le Roy, SA Water Chamber CEO, weighs in for that discussion. Benoit, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Afternoon to you and the viewers.
Let's start off with Gauteng, the province having implemented water shifting as an interim measure to deal with the current water shortages. How would you weigh in on that strategy as we speak?
It's a last resort. There's no choice. One has to try and keep the systems wet, because when they do go dry and you refill them, you get water hammer and the weak infrastructure tends to fail, and we see leaks, and a lot of it we don't see. It actually leaks into the ground. So the water shifting is quite important to try and keep all the systems wet. Otherwise, the startup is a long time. It's unlike load shedding. Load shedding is electrons on and off. Water takes a while to be depleted, but takes a while to be refilled. So one can be off for days or weeks at a time.
So on the back of that context then, as we look at Gauteng, which continues to record the largest share of South Africa's population, approximately 15.5 million people as per the last census, is the province able to keep up with the demand?
For two reasons it can't. Firstly, Lesotho Highlands Phase 2 was supposed to be online in 2018, and since then and we know it's 2028 is the earliest date. Since then, so 5 years ago, the per capita available water is about 4% per annum reduced. So we are 20%, 4 times 5, we are 20% down on available per capita. But the biggest issue is are the physical leaks, which form the larger part of non-revenue water. So, it's no use bringing water from the Lesotho that's very expensive and putting it into a system that has a leaking bucket syndrome, we call it. One needs to address the leaking bucket. And unfortunately, as the CEO of Rand Water said, it might sound simple, but Joburg needs over 20 billion just to do it and spends 1.2 billion at the moment. So the funding issue is a critical one. And also managing the issue with citizens, that we can plan around when the water is going to be available or not, etc. Because one can do this. There are tools, to do that, much like we have with the load shedding, so people can better manage their days and their nights and their lives, etc. So I think the situation is going to get a lot worse, not better, because it's a slow onset disaster. It doesn't happen overnight, and to sort it out is going to take quite a bit of time. We're not talking weeks or months or years here. This is quite a long, protracted issue, and that's what has to be a national crisis and a national issue.
How does the issue of municipalities not paying their debt come to the fore? The issue of leadership, given the coalition and political structure that is in place, is that sufficient to navigate what is required to solve the situation? How is corruption also playing a role? Let me also bring the issue of inclement weather.
So the weather is we've seen in Durban, it's too much water and floods and the likes. In Gauteng, it's not enough, very high temperatures. Unfortunately, these are the new normal. It's unpredictable, it's stochastic. We do know we're going into a probable El Nino, so we're going to have 7 to 8 years, maybe more, of drier weather, but we have more intense rainfall. So our systems are not resilient, and so the symptoms are water shedding, water shifting, and water outages. The issue of non-payment is unforgivable. Government is the biggest culprit in the city of Joburg, according to the latest releases. Department of Health owing over, I think, 600 million rand. We all have to pay a bit, because throttling the fiscus to Rand Water, our bulk water supply, is going to throttle the water. And we need to actually get everybody paying in there, including in the metros, paying towards the fees, so that we can reinstate the assets, where over 50% of the metros in South Africa, their assets for water distribution, have less than a 5-year lifespan at best. So that means we have to spend a lot more. So there's various ways of doing it. We're going to see the price of water escalate more than it has been. That's what Eskom's been trying to do, to try and recoup what people haven't been paying. And, it's a bit of a vicious circle that we as consumers and industry don't really enjoy. And we need to overcome this. So everybody needs to come to the party, and that needs leadership. It needs leadership, and we need to depoliticize basic services, especially water. As long as it stays politicized, we're just going to see what we're having at the moment. And I believe we can depoliticize it and leave it up to the administration engineers.
Well, the goal, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, states that government must ensure access to clean drinking water. And so, given how they're faring at this point, what impact is this also having on farmers? How are they coping? And what does this mean for food security in our country?
You know, if you have a look in a household, we're told we're using about 250 litres per person per day. We're not. We're using 125. Half of it is not revenue water. That's not us. That's the municipal system. So, but that's the small water. The big water is roughly a litre per calorie. So if you're fortunate enough to have 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, you're using 45,000 litres, and that's what's in the food chain. So luckily our dams are quite full despite not getting water to the cities, but the farmers don't suffer that. The biggest issue with the farmers at the moment are the late rains, and the other one is the quality of the water. We're always focusing on quantity, but the quality of water, with 97% of sewage plants, government reporting, do not comply to the green drop standards, it means that the quality of agriculture is, agricultural products are also potentially, impacted. So we have to look at that. But the growing population means we need a lot more water. So for every additional soul, we're going to need, as an adult, an extra 3,000 to 4,000 litres per person per day. That's the big water, and that's where 60% of our water in actual fact goes through. Farmers do not waste water. Their biggest cost is moving water around, is using energy to do that. It's not the actual bulk price of the water. So they're quite diligent in trying not to waste water. So the big thing is we've got a lot of water available in the system that is lost to physical leaks, and we need to get that sorted out. And we also need to stop affecting our water reserve with pollution from the sewage plants, because that means less water is available downstream for potable water use, for commercial use, industrial use, and for agriculture.
Benoit, you spoke about the Green Drop Report standards and how we're faring on that front around the country. You also alluded to a timetable perhaps to plan or mitigate against the water shedding or restrictions that are coming into effect. What other alternatives do we need to be looking at this point, given that not everyone has access to alternatives at this point? I'm worried about the healthcare scares that it might also result as a lack of clean drinking water.
Yes, cholera is back in South Africa. Unfortunately, we see it's exploding in Zimbabwe. It's because of conditions, and when sewage plants don't work, when the weather's hot, when there's a lot of leaks in the system, a lot of water tankers, which compromises the supply chain quality. We're just asking for trouble from a healthcare perspective. So what we've got to do is we've got to get the best leaders, the best scientists, best engineers, best accountants and financiers together, and craft a national campaign to address. We know we've got a crisis that's bordering on catastrophe. We know that we can handle it, but we need to do that, and we need to do it with very, very strong leadership, and we need to attract the best skills, and we are very short of those skills in South Africa. We have to bring them in through the international network that we have, and we have that. We've done it before, and we need to do that, but it comes from within first, so that we can, in actual fact, get the global network to support us. It's unheard of a town with 6.5 million people. That's what Joburg has, where up to 2/3 of the population don't have water 365 days. It just doesn't happen elsewhere in the world. Even where there are wars at the moment, it doesn't happen. So we need to dig ourselves out of this. National priority it has to be.
No, do continue. You were making your last point there, Benoit.
So it needs to be a national priority, I think. I think that's a very important part, and I think the right leadership will be attracted to that. And it has to be a public and private, so government, private sector, and active citizenry and lobby groups have to work together, as they are doing in the energy crisis at the moment. Yes, we've got another crisis. This one is a little bit more complex, but I believe that we can address it.
I wonder, as we conclude, just very quickly, what is the impact of climate change at large? How do we also begin to incorporate indigenous knowledge systems into solving this crisis?
So what the climate change is doing is, first, it exposes systems that are on the verge of collapse and not resilient. It also exposes systems that are not up to fifth industrial revolution standards. We need the best smart analytics. We need to have digitalization in place to be able to preempt the impacts of climate change. Also, we have much more evaporation in our surface storage in our dams. We need to start storing water below ground. That is a global trend. And we need to start desalinating water out of the sea, which you do as you need. You don't store it. You do it as you need into the city system, and that will give us better water security. These are all in the Master Plan of 2018, but unfortunately we've been unable to embark on it. The actions at local government level, and we know the issues we have at local government level. So the challenge is, we know the problems, the challenge is how can we get together to do it? We have the plan, we have the talk shops, we just don't have the workshops, and we need to have the workshops.